But, like, most of the time it's just, like, I'm uncomfortable and unhappy. And so, like, most of my gender euphoria is just, like, this is better. Not like, yeah, I'm a man.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. This episode has content notices for mentions of sex and issues regarding gender transitions. Hello.
Hello.
Gosh, how do we introduce ourselves?
I don't know.
We should probably write something down.
We have a name now.
We have a name now. As of episode 2, we finally have named our podcast. Hello, my name is Anna Marie, she, her, hers, and...
I am Danny. He series or they series.
And this is Rule 63, a podcast where we just talk about whatever the heck we want.
Yes.
It's a talkie podcast.
A talkie cast.
A talkie makes
like
it
an
sound
old radio talkie.
Post-silent movie, yeah. I'm going to put this book away.
Yes.
Today, so we did episode 1 last time, and it was kind of long.
So
this time we're going to make it a little more structured, a little more organized, and we're going to time ourselves.
And we have a stopwatch instead of trying to guess what bars mean.
Oh, God. We're still figuring ourselves out, and that's fine, because if there's anything I learned in my transition...
it's that it's okay.
It's
to figure it out as you go.
Grace through ambiguity. And that's a nice segue, we did not plan this, into our topic today.
Yeah.
Which is coming out.
Yes.
We figured we should properly introduce ourselves, tell our coming out story, and specifically focus on trans joy, because so much of the trans narrative these days is like, oh man, they're all so miserable.
We're gonna be happy.
So we're gonna be as happy as possible
happy.
today. We're having a good time. Awesome. So, I don't know who wants to get started.
You have notes. I didn't prepare notes.
That's all right. So, the way I like to break down coming out for people that are new to this sort of thing is, sorry if you can hear that swallow. The coming out can have 3 core elements, and tell me if this taxonomy is not good enough.
Okay.
But I think of it as like social, legal, and medical.
Yeah.
With regards to like what you actually have to do.
Yeah, the process.
The process of transitioning. And it is a process. It is multifaceted, and an individual going through this process can not even do all the things that we did, or they can do it in a different order or a different time scale. For instance, you went way faster than me. Yes, which would be an interesting thing to talk about.
Which has set us up so that now we're kind of sort of at the same point, even though I came out way earlier than you.
So when did you come out?
I initially... I've had like 5 different gender coming outs.
Yes, which is a common thing, right?
Alternatively, I had one coming out, and then I just slowly changed it, and everybody figured it out. Because I came out as like non-binary in my sophomore year of college, which would be 5 years ago, maybe. And at that point, I started using they, them pronouns, started going by Danny, because it was just ambiguous, and then I never changed. But then over time, I was like, nah, I'm still non-binary, but like, I was like really trying to hold on to like, that's it. There's nothing else we need to do now.
But you have needs.
Yes. So I now, like, best terminology would be, like, non-binary transmasculine. So...
Yeah. Of course, there are limitations to all language.
Yeah.
I came out to myself. I have a whole list of, like, my tranniversaries.
Yes.
Trans anniversaries, if you will. October 27th, 2017. That was the night when you came over and did my makeup, and I was like, oh my god, like, life changed. So, like, coming out doesn't have to be like one singular day, like, oh my God, transformative experience. It can be slow as hell. I kind of low-key didn't think of myself as a man, like, ever in my entire life, but I never felt the need to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Until the misery really came down
Just
hard.
really came in.
It really came
Grad
down.
school really made it too difficult.
Yes, this was my first semester of grad school.
Yeah.
And I don't know what, like, unlocked the sadness. Or maybe it was just
like too much stress, maybe, you know?
Maybe it was too much stress. Maybe it was just, like, exploring. I started learning about more and more trans identities because, like, I knew, obviously, what a trans person was, or to some degree, but I never thought I could be trans. I just didn't think I was a man. Which you would think I would make that kind of connection, like, oh, that doesn't make sense as much, but, you know, you really have to be shown how diverse trans identities can be. Yeah. And so when I started looking into more, like, when I first heard of, like, Riley J. Dennis, and, like, when actually, believe it or not, ContraPoints first started transitioning, that was what got me thinking. Yeah, I know, right? That's what kind of got me thinking. And the more I read into, like, the experiences of trans women and hormones, I was like, huh, that all seems pretty cool.
It sounds neat.
Sounds neat. And
so, I only came out after... like, because obviously I knew about, like, non-binary people and trans people and whatever.
Yeah.
And I only came out after someone we knew came out. And I was like, oh, this is a real thing that people I personally know can be.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. There we go.
There we go. It's like, oh, that's a thing that
Except
exists?
Apparently at some point in high school, I told one of our friends that I was, like, a dude. And I have no recollection of this. But they told me that. And I'm just like... What?
I remember going back to diaries from 2015 or earlier and writing things down like, I hate masculinity.
Yeah.
I hate being a man. I want to remove all my masculinity from my life.
Isn't that just how all men feel, though?
See, that's one crazy thing. That, like...
You will just convince yourself that it's, like... not a real thing.
Not a transgender thing, because, like, one can define gender dysphoria or being transgender or whatever as, like, an alienation from one's own gender identity, but that's just what being alive is now in capitalism. Like,
it's alienation from the self.
There are cis women that are not huge fans of being, like, sexualized and, like, the female experience. Yeah. And there are cis men who are not satisfied with the male experience and how they're, like, not properly taking
and
care
that's
of
not even like getting into stuff like how, like, racial identities prevent people from having access to, like, femininity, you know, like, to begin with. So everybody, like, gender's already super fucked.
Gender's fucked.
So, like, trying to figure out, like, oh, is this about, like, all this social bullshit that, like, of course I don't like because it's bullshit, or is it because I'm trans? But here's the moral of the story, is you don't have to, like, pick one. If things you do, like, to transition, like changing pronouns or, like, using certain words, or even eventually, like, possibly doing hormone stuff or whatever, if that makes you happier, just do it. And you don't have to be like it doesn't have to be totally 100% just about you and having nothing to do with society to be, like, okay.
Yeah, and you don't have to apply this sort of Western framework to anything you do.
Yeah.
I like to say the next step in my transition is learning how to bake bread. Because all of these things, it's just, like, changes.
Yeah.
It's easy to throw in everything I've done in my life in the past 2 years into the framework of a gender transition or a transgender process or a transgender experience. But they were just, like, little things I did to make myself happy.
Yeah.
And anyone can do those things.
If certain things feel better or more authentic, you can just do them, and you don't have to, like, hit some proof that this is the real truth about your core whatever bullshit.
Yeah. Like, and this is touching on a few of the things that I wrote down, but I didn't know when starting quote unquote this transgender quote unquote process. Transition is a weird word.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Hold on, let me get my notes.
Give me notes. Transition is a weird word because it implies a destination.
Yeah.
And it also implies a starting point.
Yeah.
Like everyone has a starting point, of course, but is there ever really a destination? That sounds so...
Do you ever get there?
Do you ever get there? Like, I didn't know anything about what my life would be right now.
Yeah.
When I first started, I just sort of did things. I tried stuff.
Yeah.
And what made me happy, I kept, and what I didn't make me happy, I didn't keep. Like, one of the first things I bought to try to explore femininity was, like, a blouse or something super high femme. Yeah. And I was like, this ain't me.
I don't like this.
I fell nicely into, like, librarian aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been having to, like, slowly be like, what, like, because obviously dudes can, like, wear whatever the fuck they want, and it's not about gender. And so it was a really long time where I was just, like, wearing dresses and skirts and all this stuff, and I was like, yeah, this is fine, I'm living my non-binary life. And then I was like, no, I actually, like, don't like this.
Yeah.
This makes me unhappy. But it was like, it's, for me, at least that type of stuff was like, I was really still attached to, like, the ingrained, like, I have to look pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, like, still, like, trying to perform an attractive, like, female gender identity, even while, like, not knowing I wasn't that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really tough.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's interesting to hear the diverse experiences of trans femmes and trans masks and non-binary people.
Yeah.
I heard the vibration of, like, never mind. We're not going to acknowledge that. What else?
How did you proceed from your personal?
My personal.
I am a beautiful woman.
The morning or the day after we went to a rave.
Yes.
Which hopefully the next episode we'll talk more about raves.
Yeah.
But I have a future anniversaries. October 27th, 2017 was my coming out to myself. How I proceeded was I came out to select friends, like the closest of friends, like our hometown friends.
Yeah.
If you ever hear us in this podcast refer to the group chat.
Yes. Those people from our hometown.
7 people.
Yeah.
From our hometown with whom we've stayed connected throughout many moves across many states and colleges, jobs, etc. But anyway, I came out to the group chat, and I also came out to my parents. And I was just so... It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling to describe it now, but there was such a pressure because I was just starting my, like, academic career, because I was just starting grad school. I didn't really do research or anything as an undergrad, so I didn't have, like, my name out there as a scientist or whatever.
Yeah.
But here I was trying to establish myself as a scientist, but also I was like, shit, I'm going to want to change my name to
My name's about to go on a bunch of shit.
My name's... Yeah, actually, I think I chose my name in January 2018, which is another conversation, actually. How did you choose your name?
It was close enough that it was not a big change, and then I was like, I'm going to pick a different name eventually. This is a temporary thing. And then I just didn't.
Okay.
I've been Danny for so long.
Yeah. Essentially forever.
Yeah.
Your inner soul has been essentially
your
whole time.
No.
Yeah, that's a weird narrative. Like,
I'm not playing with that narrative.
No.
If it feels true for you, that's great.
It didn't have to have always been true or you.
Yeah.
I'm not... I like to stress this. Came out to myself as a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
A lot of narratives are just like, ever since I was 2, I wanted to play with girls' toys. But that's not everyone.
Yeah.
And that was my perception of all trans people for a long time, and that kept me from coming out. So you don't have to destroy that narrative. We can keep that narrative for sure, but we have to have...
Realize there are other
more.
narratives.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are people who are going to know from childhood. There are people who just don't.
They just don't. Yeah.
They just don't.
I chose my name. I wanted to keep my initials first of all.
Yeah.
And I also love two-part names like Mary Sue, Ruby May, etc.
Yeah.
And I also looked, there was some good advice on like certain like Reddits and forums and whatever that was just like, you should probably pick a name. You don't have to. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do any of these things. But you should is a weird word. You should consider picking a name that was popular in your birth year.
Yeah.
So it sounds reasonable. Like I could have chose like Eleanor or Abigail, which would have been great.
Yeah.
Cool as fuck. But more realistic were like Allie, Amber, or Anna. And then I saw Anna, and I like kind of vibe with it. I think I tried Alice for a few weeks.
You did.
I did try Alice for a few weeks. But it didn't really stick. And then I realized I can do Anna Marie.
And you get your two-part.
And I get my two-part name, keep my initials.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great.
So great.
I also kept my initials.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I got them.
You got them. By the way, changing your legal name legally is kind of... It's not a super long process, but it's a lot of standing.
It's state-dependent.
Obviously, it's state-dependent. I transitioned to Connecticut, which is kind of expensive to get the court document alone. That's just like, here's a piece of paper from a court that proves that this person is now this person.
Yeah.
And you need that for all the other documents.
Yeah.
That was $275.
Jeez.
And I had to show up to a court date, which not everyone can do, depending on their transportation or accessibility needs.
Yeah.
So, right off the get-go.
It's a lot of money in Connecticut, but we are a little lucky in that it's like, once you can afford it, it's very like straightforward and done. Did you have to announce your name change? Do we have to do that?
No.
Massachusetts has to do that. You
like
have
in
to,
the paper?
Yeah.
Wow, what a weird
And
rule.
then you have to have time for people to like respond to it, which no one does, but like it's just it's like a law to stop you from like changing your name to like evade debt and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's
so
what all
someone
this
can
is for,
come in and be like, wait, that person is trying to run away with the $500 they owe me or whatever.
Whatever, yeah. It's a weird rule.
It is a weird rule.
Yeah. So you are actually
Yes.
Getting a kind of free ride because you're getting married.
Yeah, I don't know if that works. Also, I already got legally married. But I haven't looked into it enough.
Okay. I thought that was a thing.
I was like, this might theoretically work, but you're allowed to change your last name when you get married, and you can change it to anything. You don't have to change it to, like, the other person's last name. But I don't know how it's going to play around with, like, my whole name.
Okay. And
if I go in like, hi, I just got married, let me only change my first and middle names because I'm not even changing my last name.
Yeah, because it's weird, right? Like, you can, so what Danny's getting at is they're going to plan to, like, change the name when they got married and try to, which you can do for free.
Yes.
And avoid all these, like, fees and stuff. Because, like, court doc, $300 in Connecticut. Driver's license, $30. Social security number, I think it's free, but you still have to wait in line.
It's not necessarily free, but it's easier because you don't have to, like, get, like, it's easier to change it because it's just like, hi, I'm changing my name because I got married, here's my marriage certificate.
Yeah.
In that way, you don't necessarily get a free pass, but you get a sort of easier process.
Sure. Yeah. I just think that's weird because, like...
It's about the heterosexuality.
Yeah, because, like, people get married and they change their name, and so the process is a lot easier or cheaper, but that's just social convention. Like, there's no legal reason for that or medical reason for that.
Yeah.
Whereas trans people have a legal and potentially medical reason why they would need to change their name, and it's still as hard as if you're trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
We're outlaws.
These trans people trying to run away from their debts.
Exactly. We're gender outlaws.
Yeah.
Criminals. What else? My story, my narrative, and you can keep, like, chiming in whenever you want. I was afraid to come out for a long time because academia. Luckily, how it works with publishing is you're name is connected to your NIH ID. Mm-hmm. So if you publish as one name and then change your name, the name gets updated on the publication.
Yeah, it's all linked together.
It's all linked together. Yeah. So if you're an academic and you're trans, which I think is the niche market that we're trying to get to with this podcast,
all your shit will link up.
Everything will link up. So I actually convinced my advisor to publish me first as A.M. LaChance to avoid that trouble. But now when I go back to that first publication, it does say Anna Marie. So killer. Killer. I eventually did start to... I put it off for a long time just out of fear. But I did start seeing a therapist for locking down that hormone referral letter and locking down the letters needed to change the gender marker on my IDs and stuff. And I think in July 2018 or so, I started the process of legally changing my name and getting all the documents in order. And September 6th, 2018 was the date of my legal name change in court.
Yeah.
So, applause there. And just a couple weeks after I managed to... Because, literally the day that you get your court document, at least in Connecticut, you can go right to the Social Security office and be like, change my name and my Social Security number or card. And they can mail you a new card and whatever. And as soon as that's in, you can go to the DMV. And on September 14th, I went to the DMV, got my new license. Mm-hmm. And that was the day I came out to my colleagues at work, to my lab mates at UConn, which was really exciting because that was actually my coming out to the whole world. Mm-hmm. Because I had come out to some more of my friends by that point. Over the next few months, I slowly started telling more and more of my friends. I told some of my family members that weren't my parents. And the 14th was coming out to the world, which was really exciting. And after that point, there was a lot of nervous tension, how are people going to treat me? Yeah. And from that point forward, it was just having to aggressively be it's Anna or she, ma'am, etc. There are people in my workplace that just because of how they were raised go to gendered honorifics like sir or ma'am. So I had to be ma'am. And at first I was really really about doing that and I wouldn't correct them, but then I realized if I don't correct them, they're not going to change. Yeah. So my philosophy is you should just aggressively correct people because otherwise they won't change. And it feels bad at first, but then you learn to advocate for yourself. I just don't fucking correct anyone still. I'm
whatever.
Ever?
I correct the few friends who have made mistakes now. Yeah. I used to not correct them either. I will correct friends now, but I don't correct random people.
People at work?
No.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's because I'm a baby.
Big baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just I'm not dealing with any of this shit. And also it kind of made me a stronger person. Mm-hmm. I kind of this is going to sound so pathetic, but I used to never have any conviction or was ever able to advocate for myself, but this actually kind of gave me the confidence.
Yeah.
It's this is the opposite of the narrative of trans people are we can help us and dysphoric and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Being trans has empowered me so much to be no, fuck you, I'm a woman. Recognize me. And so that's one positive thing. It's the two big life lessons are grace through ambiguity, as we mentioned at the beginning, and also that I have power, that I have agency, that I can advocate for myself, that I can make a positive change in my life.
Yeah.
And that's fucking beautiful and really nice to recognize.
I can mold myself into the person I want to be.
Yes, exactly. I always see that quote that's don't try to discover yourself, try to create yourself. Mm-hmm. You're not hidden under a rock somewhere. You're you, no matter who you are, and you can make yourself a better you.
Yeah. You went to therapy and got your hormones and did all this shit. I went to therapy, finally got a letter for hormones, and then still didn't get hormones until the letter would be not really valid anymore. And then I just went and got fucking informed consent.
Okay.
Gotcha. I just gave up on all that shit.
I'm a very type A person.
Yeah.
So I was just all right, we're going to do this. I feel less nervous now. Let's do it. Like I said, in June, July, I started, or I can't remember, early 2018, I started doing the therapy and doing the things to get hormones, because that was important to me, and get the docs to choose the legal stuff. We talked about legal stuff, the medical side of transition. So the social, the coming out, the legal, the name changes and whatnot, and just like knowing your rights. I can recommend like transadvocacy.org/resources, main/resources. Great for learning, like your state's rules on name changes, as well as glad.org.
Yeah.
When it comes to like workplace and discrimination, I don't know anything about that kind of thing, but just like know your rights, especially in your state. But medical side, it was just a matter, for me, it was just a matter of seeing the therapist to get the drugs necessary for hormone replacement therapy, or HRT.
Yeah.
This is very Trans 101 stuff. We can't assume anyone's starting point when coming into this podcast, but basically, testosterone is black magic, and I hated it for many years.
Yeah.
And fun biology fact, obviously sex is not a binary, but if we're just talking about like estrogen and testosterone, testosterone tramples over estrogen.
Yeah.
So
if you're a trans man or trans masc and you go on testosterone, you don't have to block estrogen or anything.
Right.
And also, like, the effects of estrogen, besides like the sort of puberty changes, like your titties aren't going to go away, but they will shrink. But when you, like, all that stuff like doesn't really matter once you go on testosterone. But if you're trans femme, like, testosterone has done its stuff.
Testosterone has run its course. It has struck your vocal cords,
and then you have to block it. And
so if you're a trans femme and interested in HRT, you have to take a testosterone blocker, as well as the estrogen precursor estradiol. So I'm on spironolactone and estradiol.
Yes.
And testosterone did its damage.
At least you get to take pills, though.
Yeah, I no longer have.
I have to stab myself.
Yeah, I got pills. I'm fairly lucky. The average amount of testosterone in the average male's blood is something like, I forget the numbers. I don't want to say the wrong numbers, so I'm not going to say them. But it's something like on the order of magnitude of hundreds of nanograms per deciliter. Yeah. And my number I just got back a few weeks ago was 12.
That's lower than mine.
We swapped.
That's
the whole point of this podcast.
We did it.
We did it.
I haven't seen my blood for... They only took my testosterone levels one time.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I've been on HRT since November 14th, 2018.
Yes.
And since then I've seen some wonderful effects. Obviously, testosterone has struck my vocal cords and struck my face with the whole so when you're PC term, assigned male at birth, born with male chromosomes, whatever you want to call it, you have androgen receptors in your face that are responsive to testosterone.
Yeah.
And when you stop testosterone and go on estrogen, the rest of your body hair gets a lot softer and a lot smoother and a lot easier to shave, but the hair on your face usually stays just about the same.
Yeah.
And so that sucks. But overall, the changes on HRT have been hugely positive.
Yeah.
I have smoother skin, softer body hair. I obviously have breast development, which is pretty cool. I don't have like massive breasts, but I'm satisfied.
But they're there.
I'm satisfied. I'm very satisfied. A year or so
titties.
out, and I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
And they go for about 2 years, roughly. It changes with everyone, but let's see. I had notes, I think.
Titty notes.
Titty notes. My libido is gone.
Yeah.
Which is thank goodness.
Didn't want it.
I did not want.
Yeah.
A libido or...
The first month of testosterone was a nightmare. Nightmare.
A nightmare.
Nightmare.
So I've had a weird relationship with sex, but basically I've always was like disgusted
by
like sexuality in general. and like what testosterone does to you. I have since taking these hormones come to terms with my sexual identity as not only a lesbian but as a demisexual. So someone who has very little sexual urges and basically only for people that I have a strong emotional connection to. And I'm also comfortable with the term ace to describe myself, asexual. Yeah. I somewhat use them interchangeably, although demi is what I actually am. It's kind of like how...
It's just easier to say
easier.
Ace. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like who knows what a sapphic is.
Yeah.
Although I would love the visibility of those terms to increase, so I use them anyway in certain circles. But where are my notes? And I just have a deeper experience of my emotions. Like, I feel shit. Like, I cry now.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I haven't cried for so long.
So I kind of did, like, these are very, very much dipping into gender stereotypes, but
some of it's
I need to like someone to want to fuck them. And I have deeper experiences of emotions and deeper experiences of sex. Like when I am turned on, it's like a full body thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's bonkers.
It's wild.
So what is the opposite of that, Danny?
Well, so I remember being a horny teenage girl. Teenage girls are also horny, but I also was like, I don't get why boys are the way they are. It's not that bad, blah, 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 whatever. Like, men so obsessed with sex or whatever. And then in my first month of testosterone... Oh.
I can hear your creaking from the chair moving. It's all right. It's all right. Keep going.
In the first month of starting testosterone, I was like, I can barely function. I am distracted 100% of the time, and it's a nightmare. And I'm so sorry for ever judging anyone because I can't be a person. I'm not a person anymore. And then it leveled out.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was just like, Jesus
libido,
Christ.
Male libido is bonkers.
Bonkers. Fucking wild.
I don't miss it.
Yeah.
At all. The sole thing that I miss. So testosterone also increases your average body temperature and also keeps your blood temperature or body temperature more regulated.
Yeah.
So I get cold now.
Yeah, I don't get cold anymore. It's great.
Yeah, you can have that one. I'll just, wear an extra coat or buy some blankets.
Yeah.
As I wrap my cardigan more around my chest.
I sweat so much more.
Oh, God.
Sweaty boy.
Have fun with that.
I won't.
I won't. I've been using natural deodorant, but all I'm realizing is natural deodorant is for people that just don't sweat.
Yeah.
And if you are the kind of person that would use natural deodorant and you don't sweat, then you might already be the kind of person that doesn't wear deodorant.
Yeah.
So that's a sidetrack, but still. So yeah, that's a few of the positive things. Coming out is a little scary, but it really, in a way, it kind of shows you. I don't want to be like a super drama queen and be like, it shows you who you're real.
Oh yeah, because if they act like assholes, it's like, all right, fuck you.
Yeah.
Peace out.
Peace out. Whereas the ones that are like, yeah, sure, all right, are like, they're cool. But the ones that really go out of their way to support you, those who you really want to keep around. Yeah. And also, you find a whole network of other people that are also queer.
Yeah.
And who you just meet based on, hey, you're queer.
Hey, what's up?
Like, those are people who you can always form strong bonds with. Like, the connections I build with people, just, like, right off the bat, just because they're queer, are, like, super deep and super meaningful.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Trans joy. I like to use the word gender euphoria.
Yeah.
Do you have experiences of gender euphoria? The opposite of gender dysphoria?
I don't feel happy.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, dear.
I don't experience euphoria about anything.
Okay.
So.
I am very, emotional, obviously.
Yeah.
And I like to use that word. Every now and again, I take a really hot picture of myself, and I'm like, wow. Or I feel really, in tune and balanced. I especially feel validated. This is something I'd like to get across to anyone who's transitioning or whatever. Looks are nice. it's nice to be hot, but what validates me most of all is when another woman turns to me and goes, ugh, men.
Yeah.
Like, it's a social experience of
Yeah.
being a woman that's really important to me.
Yeah.
It kind of creates a tautology. Like, a woman is someone who is identified by a woman as a woman. Or like when I'm in a group of women and someone goes, how's it going, ladies? I'm like,
yeah.
Although usually
we are ladies.
We are, all of us, every single one of us.
Yeah.
Those are a lot of my notes.
That's part of my thing with like both gender dysphoria and gender euphoria are such like intense terms. And it's like I obviously sometimes is not actually the right word to use, but I do in fact sometimes experience like sort of typical gender dysphoria, like this is terrible, woe is me, whatever bullshit. But like most of the time it's just like I'm uncomfortable and unhappy, and so like most of my gender euphoria is just like this is better, not like yeah I'm a man.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah it's a lot of just like, yeah,
and
cool.
It doesn't have to be like, I feel like people sometimes, because like there's so much of a process with being trans, and like I think sometimes because of the way like we try to validate ourselves to cis people is by being like it's so intense that you just can't possibly do anything else ever. And I'm like, you can still be a trans person if you could probably live with yourself not transitioning, but you want to do it anyway. It's okay if it's not super deeply intense. Like if it makes you feel better, there you go.
Yeah.
Like the strongest ends of the spectrum are not the only things that exist.
Sure. And that kind of ties into just like how like self-care marketing is working, how just like Instagram works.
Yeah.
Because you think you're supposed to be having this amazing time all the time.
Yeah.
You see like your friends traveling the world on Instagram.
Most of life is just like
boring.
Existing.
Yeah. So I like to encourage people to focus on the small victories and just being like, if you can wake up and like look yourself in the mirror and not hate yourself, or just be like, yeah, I'm kind of cute. You don't have to have this life-changing experience every time you put on lipstick or put on a nice jacket, or I don't know.
And also, like, the two things you mentioned, like, a lot, at least for trans women, of the stuff that's gonna, like, be, like, female signifiers, like, whatever, like, putting on a nice jacket and putting on nice lipstick and feeling good about yourself is just, like, the way capitalism markets to women in general about feeling good about themselves.
Yeah,
like you don't need to buy into it to like be a woman.
No, you are a woman if you identify as
and it's
one.
very tempting, I think, especially like if you have like, so for trans women, but for like cis women, for any number of reasons, like if I think it's tempting if like you don't feel super feminine or identified as a feminine person all the time to like lean on those signifiers, and to some extent like it's demanded to like perform hyper femininity to like get to be valid, but that's bullshit.
It's all bullshit.
It's fake.
Yeah, like lipstick doesn't make me my gender. Those are just signifiers that I use to communicate.
Yeah, to communicate to other people to identify you right.
Yeah, but what makes me a woman is subtler things.
Yeah.
And what validates me is subtler things.
Yeah.
Life is not good or bad, it's just boring.
It's just boring.
And we need to fill the gaps, and sometimes that has to be good and sometimes it has to be bad.
Yeah. 40 minutes.
Do you have any closing thoughts? Do you have any weird stories?
Weird stories?
I don't know. Like, so I wrote a couple things down that are like not good, but just like weird. Like the fact that I get cold now.
Yeah.
I really like in the past few months that like there have been more posts in online queer spaces for trans lesbians specifically, which is really nice. I haven't seen that before. Maybe I've just been in the wrong spaces, but transbians, if you will.
It's one of my favorite words.
Yeah. I love portmanteaus. And also there's this one experience that I wanted to share because it has to do with like how people are socialized and whatever. So I had this one really supportive friend and love her to death. Let's call her Elise, just for,
to have a name.
To have a name. So I was over her apartment one time, and we were like getting ready to go out. It was one of the first times I was going out.
Yeah.
As Anna. It was very fun. This was very early in my transition, and we were getting ready, and she just like starts changing in front of me, like taking her clothes off, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, I'll leave or whatever," because that's like what I was trained and socialized to do. And she was like, "No, you're fine. You're a woman. We do this. We do this. You can be in here." And I'm like, I was trained my entire life that I'm not supposed to see this, so I'm sorry.
It's just like, It's fine. It's weird.
She was just doing her best, and I love her.
It's weird sometimes, and like obviously this does not apply across the board all the time for everyone, but to some extent, like queer men get to be one of the girls.
Yeah, that's something
so sometimes I can't tell if like I'm getting misgendered or if people are just like comfortable with me as a person.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm like, are you doing this because you like subconsciously view me as a woman? Or are you doing this because you know I'm not a piece of shit?
Right. Because like trans women get to have that experience of being surrounded by cis women and feeling super validated and have a good time.
I don't want to be validated by cis men because like
fuck cis men.
What cis male validation looks like is not something I'm interested in.
No, not at all. And that makes it really difficult for trans men.
Yeah. Woe is me.
No, we're gonna be happy, Danny.
Wait, fuck.
We're supposed to be happy this episode.
It's fine. I desperately only wanted to hang out with guys, and not only wanted to hang out with guys in high school. I desperately wanted to be one of the guys in high school. Throwback to me being trans. And then I went to college, and I was like, I have only made friends with women in my adult life, or at least majority made friends with women in my adult life, including and like half the time when I make male friends, they don't stay men for long.
yeah that's true. Well, here's to our transition stories, and here's to us making more friendships of all people of all genders, cis or trans, whomstever from here on out. I'm very happy with my transition. I'm happier than ever because I came out. And I just want people to know that.
You're a beautiful flower.
Thank you. You're beautiful. Oh my god. I'm going to cry.
Again. Here it is.
Again. It's happening.
Here's the womanhood. Here's the hormones.
I'm so quintessentially female. God, I love having a womb.
I fucking hate that joke.
I can't get enough of it. Anyway, that's all for this episode of Roll 63. We will see you elsewhere, and
we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week
for the rave episode.
Oh yes, we're gonna take acid. I don't know. I can't stop laughing now. I'm filled with gender euphoria. That's what
filled with trans joy.
Trans joy. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.